everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, our Masterclass. I hope you're having a good day today. First off, I'd like to thank you all for attending. We're excited to have you here and look forward to taking you a deep dive into our Masterclass, starting a successful controls division. So, just a little housekeeping before we get underway. Please leave your cameras and microphones off for the best experience for everyone. The webinar today is being recorded and a link will be emailed to everyone who is registered. Questions can be asked in the chat room by clicking the chat bubble at the bottom of the screen. And today we expect the webinar to last about 45 minutes or so, with time at the end to answer any questions. The key topics or takeaways today are how to determine if controls will be a viable business for you or your company, how to find the right manufacturer to partner with based on your business approach, and what you need to be successful from the start. For those who aren't already familiar with Computrols, we are a US manufacturer of building automation controls based in Gretna, Louisiana, just outside New Orleans, and we are primarily known for our HVAC control system. Some of our differentiating factors would be our lifetime warranty, our ability to integrate to just about any third-party system, including a lot of our competitors' legacy systems, our drive to empower the end user through simplicity in everything we do or make, and we excel in removing or significantly reducing operation and maintenance costs associated with these systems. Computrols started off as a service company in 1983, servicing third-party building automation systems. And in the late 80s, our founder got fed up with a lot of the problems he saw in the industry, such as planned obsolescence, complicated software, and limiting customers to what they were able to do, even within their own building automation systems. So we hired on a software developer, and in 1989, we came out with the first version of Computrols building automation software, better known as CBAS, and began integrating with those third-party systems. Pretty soon after that, our founder, Roy Lynch, got frustrated, this time with being dependent on those manufacturers for controls, as they were constantly telling him and his customers, you have to upgrade to our latest and greatest technology. So in the early 90s, Computrols began manufacturing their first line of DDC controllers. And since that time, we've always manufactured our product in the US. And we've always provided the industry's only lifetime warranty. As time has gone on, our product offerings have expanded into lighting control, access control, and fire alarm systems as well. Ultimately, we want to give our users a system they can manage on their own. One way we do this is by giving them a software package with the same rights as our own technicians. We also provide a lifetime warranty product along with free remote tech support and a number of unique integration solutions. And that's really what we're best known for. Our ability to integrate to legacy third-party systems that other manufacturers are no longer supporting. Computrols goes to market in a couple of different ways. First, Computrols has branch offices in New Orleans, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Southern California, and Washington, DC. We also support many sites remotely because we give our customers the power to operate their system autonomously. What you'll find is we have little pockets of customers in different parts of the country where we don't necessarily have a branch office or a distribution partner, but they're able to operate that system themselves. Then we also have a service and distribution partner network throughout the country. Our distribution partner network is made up of companies who are typically mechanical or control contractors that sell, install, and maintain our control system. So I'm going to wrap up the Computrols background piece here, but if becoming a Computrols distribution partner sounds interesting to you, then we'll have some contact information for you at the end of this presentation. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce you to our Director of Sales and Marketing, Mr. Scott Holstein. who has been with Computrols for over 5 years now, and like me, came into this industry brand new and having to learn it from scratch. Scott has quickly become an authority within the industry by creating a huge amount of educational content that will better inform those in our industry, and we hope shine a small spotlight onto building automation so that it may hit the radar of new graduates. Accompanying Scott today, we are very lucky to have Mr. Mike Clayton with the hat. Mike has been Computrols for nearly 20 years now. He is our Director of Strategic Partnerships, and he's served in a number of roles throughout his years with Computrols. He's worked out in the field as project manager, worked on technical support, and directly with our R&D team, and helped Scott and me on the sales and marketing side. He's our very own Swiss Army knife. So with that, gentlemen, I'll hand you over. Scott and Mike, if you're both ready, please take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Simon, and thank you all for joining us for the webinar today. As Simon made reference to, I've been with the company for 5 years now, Mike much longer, and one of the things that Mike and I work on together quite frequently is bringing on new distribution partners to sell our controls line, and also making sure that our existing partners are successful and making sure that they're successfully able to sell, install, and maintain our system. So this is something that we see and work on quite a bit. And basically, we want to share with you today some of the things that we've learned over the past several years, figuring out what has worked for some of our partners, some things that haven't worked, and giving you some perspective as to what you need to consider if you're talking about bringing on controls as a new business line. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. I'm going to get more so into the business aspect of bringing on controls, and Mike is going to discuss a little bit more about the assessing manufacturers as a partner and making sure that your business goals and your manufacturer's goals are all aligned when you decide to make this decision. Now, one thing that we see is oftentimes these decisions are driven by either the sales department or the service department, where they're seeing opportunities where you all could potentially install controls and do your own controls. And maybe there's more of an opportunity there, but really one of the things we want to take into account throughout the webinar today is that this is an organizational decision, not simply one that affects one or two departments. So is adding building automation services even a good idea for you? I think that everybody sees the appealing parts of this. You can win more work. Maybe you're using a third-party subcontractor to install controls right now, and you see, look, I'm leaving money on the table. There are oftentimes better margins in controls than there are in mechanical work. You see that it does make you more competitive in some areas where your competition is offering this turnkey solution, so you want to offer it as well. But with that said, it is appealing, but at the same time, not for everyone. So some things you need to ask yourself are, am I willing to commit the resources to make this successful? And we're going to get into what those resources are here shortly, but realistically, many can't. If you're already stretching your bandwidth to the max, and you're talking about doing it with your people that you have in-house now without really getting additional help, it's probably not the best idea. So one of the things, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about is making sure that you get all parties involved in this decision. And so going into the investment piece of this, this is really the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, are you willing to commit these resources? Because we're not just talking about whatever that monetary number is to buy in to represent a certain brand of controls, or how much inventory you have to have, whatever that is. You're talking about potentially adding personnel, talking about tech training for your technicians and your internal team, talking about sales training, talking about training for estimating purposes, and then also the effort of the sales and marketing team of making customers aware that this is a service you offer. So it's not something you want to dip your toe in the water with. Oftentimes we have we have mechanical contractors who come to us and say, oh, we're real excited about this, but we want to make sure that we have that first job in the bag before getting started. And while I completely understand why you might want to do that, what this is going to lead to more than likely is you have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You're pitching controls with limited information. So now I'm going to add this controls line. I'm going to act like I already have it, and then I'm going to try to sell it to all these customers that I come across. But you probably haven't gotten proper training from a sales perspective, or certainly from a technical perspective, because you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So we recommend, if you're going to make this effort, understand that this investment is not a small one to make. You really have to consider that you're probably, by the end of it, going to be a few $100,000 in before you start to see that reward on that investment. So have a plan, have a realistic plan, set expectations for what you expect 1 year down the line. For 1 year down the line, let's say you want to have one employee that is controls only, and that is your champion, your go-to person for controls. Year 2, you want to have 2 employees. You want to have established so much revenue by year 2 and have so much in your pipeline. And then year 3, you add another employee. You say, I want to add my goal. I want these goals to be here. Make a 5-year plan and set expectations accordingly. So when we talk about these investments, things that you have to keep an eye out for are investing in personnel. Ask yourself, do we have somebody in-house with controls experience? If so, are we willing to pull them away from whatever it is that they're doing now to dedicate them to controls? If not, you need to go out and find a one controls-focused individual with some technical knowledge, and that person needs to be the champion for controls within your organization. So, and when I say champion, I mean they need to be getting everybody excited about it. They need to be there to do sales support. They need to be there to do the installs when those come around. They need to be there to teach your team and coach up your team on the product. And again, I want to make sure that expectations are set properly, that this person may not be billable for a whole year. So understand that it's an investment in the future of your controls division, but that is something that you have to accept is, look, controls sales, the life cycle, not the life cycle, but the sales cycle is 6 months to a year easily. So when you first get started, it's not going to happen immediately, but hopefully you have some customers in mind that you've already been talking to, and those are ones that are going to be some quick, easy wins right at the outset. Then we look at investment from a training standpoint. So you're talking about not only the cost of whatever it is to get training on a product, you're talking about the time that your technicians, salespeople, estimating team, whoever is in that training is going to spend there. Oftentimes we forget, how valuable people's time is and what their opportunity cost is. So if I have a technician that's sitting through controls training, those are hours that he's not spending in the field doing billable work. Same with salespeople. If I have a salesperson sitting in sales training on how to sell controls, that is time not spent making cold calls or calling on their existing accounts. So consider the amount of training that is going to go into making this a success. And then keep in mind that it's not over. It's not a one-time, oh, we trained everybody knows now. Continuous training to keep everybody sharp and keep controls at the top of mind is going to be really key. And that's where that champion comes in, because you don't necessarily need to call on your manufacturing partner to provide that training once you have someone internally who's become that expert. And then we're talking about an investment in customer awareness. So getting the word out that you now offer controls as a service. And if you offer a specific kind of controls, where you fit in and what different value you might bring than that customer's existing controls partner. So things that you might do to invest in customer awareness, add some pages to your website on the service that you're offering, Send out emails to all of your customers and industry partners to let them know, and then coaching up your service team on looking for these opportunities. Oftentimes, the service technicians are the ones who have the best relationships with customers, and they hear those pain points from customers of, I'm tired of controls line X, Y, and Z because they're doing this, that, and the other. So oftentimes your service team can be your best foot in the door when you say, we actually offer controls now. And at the point where, all right, you've generated some interest, now let's get our sales team involved. Now let's get our controls expert involved in that conversation. But coaching up that service team member can pay dividends. So then, before making the investment, you really have to answer the question, are your customers looking for controls? Is this an area where, your service team members are coming to you, or your sales team members or your project managers are hearing this a lot through the grapevine of, if we had controls, we would have, we'd have other opportunities with these customers to grow the account. Consider how you're going to incorporate controls into your existing offerings. And is this an offering that you think that your salespeople can bring to market successfully? Because oftentimes we're all pushed to do more with less. And so sometimes there's not a dedicated salesperson. It's the same people who are doing the installations and maintenance are also doing the sales. So, considering the bandwidth of the people that you currently have, is there enough there to bring a new offering to market successfully? And then consider what kind of projects and customers you're going to pursue. Obviously, your existing customer base is going to be the most appealing here. However, consider, down the line, are you going to go after the plan and spec new construction type work? Are you going after existing buildings and integrations and retrofits of existing buildings? Are you going to be working in the healthcare market versus the commercial real estate market? Really think through all of these questions before making that decision. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mike now to talk a little bit more about how to assess potential manufacturer partners in our space.
All right, Scott, thank you. So everyone, Scott's done a great job of kind of covering the bases in terms of making that decision and leap to commit to establishing a controls segment of your business and kind of what that'll look like. What we're going to focus on for the next few slides is once you've made that decision, how do you go about selecting the right partner? And we use the word partner as in distribution partners and not just simply dealers, because that implies the relationship that's there. This is kind of an overarching theme that there's a role to be played for both sides. It's not simply repping someone's product. It's about finding a product that matches some synergies in terms of business plan, like Scott mentioned, a product that, are you gravitating toward plan and spec market, or are you preferred for, negotiated work, et cetera. So when it comes to picking the right partner, how do I get my team up to speed on your product? That's a big one, right? In other words, we're starting off, what does it take to grab product A or B and get on board with it? Is it, intuitive? Is there a massive amount of certifications and training you have to participate in? Is that product designed for you to be able to onboard yourself? Or are you heavily reliant on the manufacturer for that support? Another one is, how open is the system? Open protocols, this term's thrown around a lot, but really it's more than just, slapping a label on a product. It's how well does that product line integrate with third-party hardware? This is especially key if you're focused more on the service side of things, because you're going to come across a myriad of manufacturers and product lines and generations within those product lines in your day-to-day service. How equipped are you going to be to tackle those with a product in-house? Also, the licensing for those third-party protocols is key. Is it a convoluted licensing scheme, or fairly easy for you to understand what your costs are going to be to bring those third-party protocols into a solution for your customer? What does the future look like after integration? So we've tackled the challenge that's immediate of supporting the existing legacy hardware, but how do I offer a pathway forward for that customer in terms of upgrades? Can I replace that with native hardware? Do I have to go out and purchase from yet another vendor, a third-party solution for those products? These are all key factors. Product availability. If I land a new project, how quickly can that manufacturer get product in my hands? You might have been working this lead for quite a long time, and now you're ready to pull the trigger. The owner's ready. The money's there to be picked up. How quickly, what's your lead time on that inventory to be made available to you? Also, lead time factors in product churn, right? How likely is that manufacturer to keep a product line that's stable and mature? Or are you going to be forced to that upgrade cycle every couple of years where you have to learn a whole new catalog, new product nomenclature, new tools to work with it, et cetera? How do I get started? What's the buy-in? Is there a quota that I have to meet in terms of minimum volume per year, or an inventory level I have to maintain? Are there franchise fees involved? All those factors relate directly to startup costs and are key into determining what you're going to be facing in terms of a commitment financially to get started with that manufacturer. So lifetime warranty, Scott touched on earlier. This is kind of a big differentiator for us in the industry, but it's worthwhile for you asking, after you've onboarded, what does the process look like to support that product going forward? What does the warranty cover? Are extended warranties costly or even available? What's the relationship between that manufacturer and your customer? Are you expected to provide those replacements yourself, or does the manufacturer support you in those efforts? In terms of lifetime, what about upgrades? What's the process look for software upgrades? Am I required to keep a site at a certain level, and is there a cost for that, or patches and stuff like that included? So again, upgrades, are they forced or not? What's the frequency and cost? Are licenses a static price or subject to renewal? This is an ongoing trend in the industry where costs are being subscribed. I'm sure you've seen the acronym Software as a Service, SaaS. And this is basically a way of generating recurring revenue for the manufacturer. So often now you don't purchase a license, you're in effect leasing it, and there'll be ongoing costs. Is that something you're going to be subjected to? Can you purchase direct from the manufacturer? Is your relationship direct with the manufacturer, or is it a two-step model where you're actually dealing with another vendor or another distributor in between you and the manufacturer? Having that close feedback cycle to support and availability, or close contact loop for upgrades and things like that. New product development is key to your long-term success. So the next thing is territories. What are your operating parameters as a dealer for a particular manufacturer? How do they divvy up the country, and are you subjected to these kind of arbitrary rules that you're only allowed to do business in one zip code or area code? Does that manufacturer just try to saturate an area with dealers and let the survival of the fittest apply? Are there any protections or coordination with other partners? Are you part of a network that's a team, or are you just a bunch of fish competing against one another in a small pond? Will that manufacturer be bidding against you on work? This is another kind of nasty trend, of cherry picking of sweet jobs by the manufacturer, and then you find yourself competing with somebody who, hell, they're the ones making it, so their margins are going to be a lot better than yours. Are those kind of expectations lined out in writing? Meaning, what you can expect from your manufacturer in terms of performance, what can you expect from your competitors and partners in dealership? References. Can you speak to other people who have been down this road before you? How willing is that manufacturer to share those with you? This is, often key. Is we do this a lot in business and in life. Let's talk to somebody else who's been down this road already, share some stories, and see if what we expect aligns with what they're telling us the situation will be like. So references are key, and also how willing that manufacturer is going to be willing to share those with you. So with that being said, hopefully that sums up the steps in between making the decision to commit to a controls division and then how you go about selecting the right one. At this point, I'll turn this back over to Scott.
Thank you, Mike. And now we're going to talk about what you can do to give yourself the best chance at success once you've decided to take the plunge and you've started a controls division, you've chosen a partner that fits your business model, that fits your ethos, and you're ready to get started here. So as I mentioned previously, hopefully you have some potential projects in mind before getting started where you have longtime customers or really strong relationships with customers. And once they hear that you're offering controls, they're going to be the ones that are first on board. We talked about it already. You have to have a champion within your organization, not only to be the expert, but also to get buy-in from everyone involved, to be that cheerleader, if you will, for controls. And part of that cheerleader being successful is buy-in from ownership or management or whoever drives initiatives within your company. When it comes from the top, it means a lot more than, oh yeah, we have controls now. This guy, Scott, we just hired him. He's a controls guy and he's shouting from the rooftops about controls, but I don't know. You get the word from ownership or management. It sounds a little bit different of, okay, this is something that is really happening and we need to get behind it. Then when you do decide to make this jump, I say to our partners, get everybody in your organization together, talk to, get the service department, maintenance department, sales engineers, outside salespeople, get everyone together and explain to them that this is a concerted effort that your company is making. And then after you've met with everybody and made them realize the importance of it, then pull those departments out separately and discuss their role in this new venture and what they need to do to make it a success. And it wouldn't hurt if you have some incentive for them to do that as well. And maybe most importantly is get your salespeople to drink the Kool-Aid. Ultimately, your success in controls is going to start off with getting that first job. And to do that, your salespeople need to be out there pushing this new service that you all offer, and make sure that they feel confident in what they're selling. So I mentioned the training aspect before. When you get started, make sure that you have training prearranged with your manufacturer that you decided to partner with. The technical training is obviously going to be a big piece of that. Make sure that you get that 101 course on the books where your whole team is now up to speed on the basics of installing and maintaining these systems. And then consider sales training as well. For salespeople, they have to go out and repeat and try to replicate that value proposition that you're teaching them. So they need to practice that pitch. They need to be able to do a demonstration of how the system works. They need to prepare collateral and case studies. In this line of sales, it's a slightly different approach to what you're going to see in mechanical sales. It's not necessarily a matter of getting out as many bids as possible, but also maintaining those relationships and understanding we have a long sales cycle here. So we're going to need to continue to stay with it. And one of the things that we preach is we look at the engagement of a controls contractor versus a mechanical contractor, where that controls contractor is likely going to be a very big part of how those buildings operate for the next decade or so. So understanding that you're going to have that level of relationship changes the game a little bit. And then teaching your estimating team, if that's your approach, is teaching your estimating team, your proposal team, how do we put together these projects? What kind of, how do I know what parts I need? How do I know how much labor to put into installing a VAV versus programming an air handler? start to get some ideas of that from your partner, your manufacturer partner, and start leveraging that as training for your estimating team. And then start off with a process, and your process may look a little bit different, but from a sales perspective, it's identify an opportunity and then qualify that opportunity. Is that actually, do they have budget? Or do they look like a good customer for us? And then, from there, you've qualified the opportunity, you've generated this interest. You bring in your controls expert to come and, talk technical, do a site walk, do a takeoff, and then bring that takeoff to your estimating team or maybe back to your salesperson to say, this is what we need. And we need to estimate the labor and materials. We need to determine, are we going to include a maintenance agreement? How many hours of maintenance? Does it include parts, things like that? And then finally, sales goes back, reviews the proposal with a customer, and then follow up to make sure that message is driven home and that relationship is maintained to the point of that decision being made. So have a process in mind before getting started. That process will likely change over time as you figure out what works for you and your organization, but have something in mind to get started with. And then as you do get started, we've harped on this a lot. Pushing this out from a sales perspective is going to be very important, because you make that first sale, your technicians get their hands dirty, they figure out a lot of the how and why, and a lot of the details of operating these systems. And then your estimating team gets better at estimating them, your sales team gets better at selling them. So put a lot of lines out in the water, and keep in mind, you don't need to catch the biggest fish first. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. We've got partners who they go after the biggest building in their city. And look, while we love the ambition, making that your first project can be a little daunting. So no project's too small when you're first getting started. You really want to get that experience of going through that process. And generally on smaller projects, there's a little less on the line and maybe a little less complexity to allow your team to get their feet wet. And as I mentioned before, start getting the word out every possible way you can, through your technicians, through your salespeople, through your marketing team, through your emails, through your phone calls. Every touch that you have with the customer, make sure that customer is aware that you now have this new service. And finally, take advantage of your manufacturer's resources. When you get started, you should have a good idea of how do you support me for finding new customers. Will you help me do demonstrations for customers? Do you have the ability to help me with proposals? And is there some kind of outreach that you can help me with to get me in front of new leads? Understand what those advantages understand what those resources ahead of getting started. And then when you do get started, make sure you're taking full advantage of those. And finally, I wanted to point you all in the direction. This is an ebook that we've had for a couple of years now. Covers a lot of what we discussed in today's webinar. This is the Mechanical Contractor's Guide to Starting a Controls Division. And we will be sending out a link to this in our follow-up email after the webinar. So I appreciate you all taking the time today. Simon, do we have any questions?
No, there's nothing come in so far, but feel free, anybody, to fire a question in using the chat bubble.
So while we're waiting to see if any questions come in here, you'll see Mike and my contact information up on the screen. If this is something that you're considering, if you're considering adding controls to your offerings, we'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you personally. It's something that we talk to people about on a daily basis, so it is an area of expertise for us. And of course, if you are interested in potentially becoming a Computrols distribution partner and want to learn more about our solutions and the support that we provide our partners, of course, we'd be happy to have those conversations as well. And since we haven't received any other questions, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for joining us for the webinar today. We hope to see you at our future webinars.